In this lesson, we'll be covering frequency polygons. So the first question we have here says the table shows some information about the height of 60 plants. So it has the heights on the left-hand side and it has the frequency on the right-hand side for each class interval. So when it comes to drawing frequency polygons, the first thing we do is we don't plot this, we don't plot any of these numbers here. We in fact plot the midpoint against frequency. So what we need to do is actually make a separate column. So if we make a separate column, maybe here and write midpoint, so I'll write MP for short, and we write the midpoint here, and then we're going to plot the midpoint on the x-axis and the frequency will be on the y-axis. So now if I do the first one, what's the midpoint? So what's halfway between 20 and 30? That's just going to be 25. For this one, it would be 35. This one would be 45. Between 50 and 60 is 55. And between 60 and 70 is 65. Now we're going to use these numbers and we're going to plot them against the frequency. So now if we have a look, it says draw the frequency polygon to show this information. So we have a graph here. We have the height on the x-axis and the frequency on the y. So the first one I'm going to do is plot 25 centimeters against 8. So I go to 25, which is here, and then 8. So 8 is going to be here. So that would be my first point. Then we're going to have 35 against 13. So 35 against 13. So 15 is over here. So 13 is over there. Then we have 45 against 25. So we have 45, which is here, and that's going to be 25, which is here. Then we have 55 against 10. So we have 55 and against 10. So we plot a point there. And then we have 65 against 4. Is 65, and that's 5. So 4 is over here. Now, when it comes to drawing a frequency polygon, we don't join them up from the origin. We don't join them up from the origin, and we don't draw them as a curve. We just connect them using a straight line. So I'll show you what that should look like. So something a bit like this. So we just connect from the first point to the second point, and then so on. So you should get something that looks a bit like this. And that's all frequency polygon. So that's all that's involved. You have using this graph or using this table to draw a frequency polygon on this graph. Now we'll move on to the second question. So the second question, so it says over here, the frequency table gives some information about the times it took some office workers to get to the office one day. So we have our time on this axis, this time on the left side of this table, and we have the frequency. So again, we're not going to plot this. We're not going to plot these numbers. We're in fact going to make a separate column that has the midpoints. So for each of these class intervals, we're going to make a separate column that has a midpoint, and then we're going to plot these on the x against frequency on the y-axis. So if I write midpoints, like MP for short, what's in between 0 and 10, so that would be 5. This one would be 15. This one would be 25. This one would be 35. This one would be 45. And this last one in between 50 and 60 is 55. So now we're going to plot these against the frequency. So the first one is 5 minutes against 4. So if I go to 5, which is, so that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So it goes up into, up by 2s. So 5 would be, so that's 2, 4, and 5 would be here. So we have 5 against 4 and 4. So each one is going up by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So each one is going up by 1. So 5 is over here, and then 4 is going to be there. The second one is we have 15 against 8. So if I plot 15 against 8, so again, 15 will be here, and then 8. So 8 is going to be over here. So that's 10. That's going to be 2 less, so we end up with 8 over there. Then we have 25 against 14. So 25 is going to be there, and then 14 is just going to be 1 less than 15. So 14 is there. Then we have 35 against 16. So 30 is going to be here. So that means 35 is going to be over here. And we plot it against 16. So 15 is over here. So that's 16 there. and we have 55 against 2. Sorry, so that should be 35 against, yeah, 35 against 16. So 45 against 6. So 45 against 6. So that's 5 over here, then 6 would be over there. And the last one is 55 against 2. So 50 is there, so 55 is over here, and then 2 is just up here. Now we're going to connect them using a straight line. And remember not to include the origin, and remember to make sure it's a straight line. So that's, we just connect them with a straight line. So from there to there by each point. So we're going point by point and connecting it with a straight line. And your frequency polygon should look something a bit like that. So that's part A done. So part B now says write down the modal class interval. So the modal, so mode, so this is just mode, and that just means the part that occurs most often. So I can write, the mode definition of mode is the number that occurs most often. So number that occurs the most. So now we're going to look back at our table, and we're going to have a look which number, so on the frequency column, which number is the biggest? So which out of these time intervals occurs the most? So if we look here, the biggest one we have is 16, and we're going to correspond that to the left-hand side of that. So where this is our class interval, this is our modal class interval, because this is the biggest value. This is the number that occurs the most out of all these numbers. So 16, and then we look back onto the left part of that column, and we're just going to copy this time interval. So time is in between 30 and 40. So that's all we're going to copy, right? So we have 30, then we have t, which is time, and then we have 40 over here. That's what we're doing. Not too bad for question part B. This one says one of the office workers is chosen at random. Work out the probability that this office worker took more than 40 minutes to get to the office. So this is asking for more than 40 minutes to get to the office. So over here we have this interval, which is the time is going to be in between 40 and 50, and it's greater than 40. So I'm going to include this one. So if I get that highlighter, I'm going to include this one, and I'm going to include this one. So I'm going to include both of them. The reason for that is this is greater than 40, this class interval. So it's greater than 40, and this is also greater than 40. So this is in between 50 and 60. I won't include this interval because t has to be less than 40. And the question, if you look back at the question, it says, work out the probability that this office worker took more than 40 minutes, so more than 40 minutes. So that's the reason why I only include these two. So this is greater than 40, and obviously this is greater than 40. So that's the two class intervals that I'm going to include. So if we have a look, we're going to add up these two numbers. So we have 6 plus 2. So 6 plus 2, that's 8. So that's 8, 8 times. And we want the total amount. So it's a probability. So we need to work out the total amount. So that's going to be 4 plus 8. So that's 12. 12 plus 14, that's 26. Plus 16. So 26 plus 16 is going to give us 42 plus 6, that's 48, and plus the 2, so that's 50. So 50 is equal to the total. So now if we go back to the question, we have 8 over 50. So 8 over 50. And that's our probability. So 6 marks for this type of question. If we go on to now the for the third question. So it says the table gives some information about the lengths of branches on a bush. So we have the length over here, and we have the frequency. Again, wants us to draw a frequency polygon. So we don't include any of these numbers. We have to make a separate column that includes the midpoint, and then plot that against frequency. So now, if we begin to do that, so we're going to plot midpoint against frequency. So what's in between 0 and 10? That's 5, 10 and 20, so that's 15. This would be 25. We have 35 here, 45 and 55. We're going to plot these numbers against frequency. So if I plot 5 against 20, so we're going to plot 5 against 20. So 5 would in fact be here. So we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So it's going up in twos. So 5 would be here, and then 20. So all the way here. So that's our first point. Then we have 15 against 12. So 15 would be here, and then 12 would be here. Then we have 25 against 10, so 25 against 10, so that's 10 there. Then we have 35 against 8, so 35 against 8, so if 10 is over here, 10 is over here, then 8 would be 2 below, so we have 35 against 8. Then the second last one is 45 against 6, so we have 45 here and then 6, so 5 is over here, so 1 above is just 6, and then we have 55 against 0, so that one's pretty simple. 55 against 0, that's there. Now again, the same method, so we're just going to join these up with a straight line, so we're just going to join these up with a straight line. Remember, start from the origin, no curves. So if I just join that there, and you should get something that looks like that for your final answer. So that's the frequency polygon. Part B again says write down the modal class interval. So if we go back to the top, the number that occurs the most often, so that the number that occurs most often, if we have a look, it's going to be the biggest number here, so that's 20. And if we look to the left column, that's going to be this class interval, so the first class interval. So the length is in between 0 and 10. So we're just going to copy that down. So length is in between 0 and 10. Then part C says one of the branches is chosen at random. Work out the probability that this branch is less than 20 centimeters long. So similar to the question we saw before, the part C, the other one asks more than. So this is asking less than 20 centimeters. So if we go look back at our table here, and we want less than 20. So this is going to be more than 20. The length has to be greater than 20. So we're not including this. So the ones we're going to include is this one. This has to be less than 20. And this is obviously less than 20. It's in between 0 and 10. So these two are the ones we're going to include. So now if we add these two together, so we have 20 plus 12, that's going to give 32. And we need to work out a total. So we have 20 plus 12, that's 32, plus 10, that's 42, plus 8, that's 50, and plus a 6, we have 56, which is equal to the total. So our final answer is going to be 32 over 56. So we have 32 over 56, and that's our final answer. So again, 6 marks for this type of question. And we'll have a look at the last type of question you might see in exam. So this one says, in a month, Janet traveled by bus 25 times and by train 25 times. The grouped frequency table records the number of minutes, so in X minutes late each of her buses and trains were. So on this side, we have the interval, the classes interval for each time. Then we have the frequency for the bus and the frequency for the train. Part A says on the grid, draw 2 frequency polygons. So nothing much has changed. The only difference is we have to draw 2 on one graph. So again, we're not going to plot this. We're going to write our midpoints and then plot one for bus and plot another one for train. So if I write MP for short here, so midpoint, we have in between 0 and 5, so that's 2.5. In between 5 and 10, that's 7.5. This one's going to be 12.5. Here we have 17.5, and this one is 22.5. Now we're going to plot this for the so this on the x-axis for the minutes, and then plot one graph for bus and one frequency polygon for train. So the bus one, if I do this one first, we have 2.5 against 5. So 2.5 against 5, so that's 2.5 there, and then 5 is over here. So that's the first one. Then we have 7.5 against 15. So 7.5 and then 15 is all the way here. So that's 7.5, 15. Then we have 12.5 against 4. It's 12.5 all against 4. So each one is going up by 0.5. So 4 is going to be two little small boxes below 5. So we're going to end up there. Then we have 17.5 against 1. So 17.5 and then 1. So that's each one is going up by 0.5, remember. So that's going to be 2 boxes to get to 1. So we're going to end up there. And then we have the last one, 22.5 against 0. So 22.5 and then 0. So that's pretty simple. So I'm going to join this first one here. I'm going to do it in one color, and the other I'm going to do train in a different color. So if I do this one in, let's say I'll do it in green. So I'll do buses in green. So just we ideally you'd want to draw key in your exam just so the examiner knows the difference when they're looking at which is the bus and which is the train. So if I do this one in green, I'm going to end up with something that looks like this. So all I'm doing is joining up the points that I plotted. So this would be the first one. So this is bus. Now, if I go back and plot our points for train, so if I plot the points for train, what I'm going to have is something that looks like this. So we have 2.5 against 9. So 2.5 is here, and 9 would be 2 boxes on the 10, so over there. Then our second one is 7.5 against 6. So 7.5 and then 6 is 2 boxes above 5, so we end up with there. Then we have 12.5 against 6, so 12.5 is here and then 6 is over here. Then we have 17.5 against 2, 17.5 against 2, and then we have, sorry, so 17.5 against 2, so that should actually be each box is going up by 0.5, so 2 is actually going to be 4 boxes. And then we have 22.5 against 3, so 22.5 all against 3, so that's 2, that's 2.5, and that's 3 there. So I'm going to do this one in a different color. So if I choose blue for this color, so blue for this color, all I'm going to do is join up these points for the train now. So I'm going to join up these points for the train blue, so we have a different color here. So that should be there. And then the last one is that. So your frequency polygon should end up something like this. So what we have is two different frequency polygons, one for bus, which is in green, and one for train, which is in blue, both on the same graph. So part B says use your so part B, use your polygons to compare the lateness of buses and trains and comment on any differences you observe. So we need to comment on any differences we observe. So what we're going to have to do is use mathematical reasoning to translate that into words. So the first thing we can look at when in these type of questions or any graph questions, most graph questions, but especially frequency polygons, is look at the mode. So use the mode to make a comparison, and then the other one would be an observation. So anything you can observe in the graph. So we'll do the mode first. So we'll see which out of here in the buses, which occurs the most late in the time interval. So the mode, the biggest number that occurs most often is 15. And if we correspond that to there, so for bus, it's going to be in between 5 and 10 minutes. That occurred the most late. So the most number of buses were late in between 5 and 10 minutes. And then we can make a comparison with a train. So the modal train, the modal class interval for train. So the number over here that occurs the most often, that's going to be 9. And then we correspond that to the left. So the most amount of trains that were late were in between 0 and 5 minutes. So that's one comparison. We've made one comparison. So for bus, what we can say is the modal class interval, modal class, or in fact, instead of writing modal, what we can say is the most, we can say that in between 0 and, so in between 5 and 10 minutes, the most amount of buses were late. So in between 0 and 5 and 10 minutes, sorry. So in between 5 and 10 minutes, so I can say in between 5 and 10 minutes, the most amount of buses were late. Compared to, so always use that that word that it asks in the question, so it wants us to make a comparison. So we just say compared to, and then trains were in between, if we look back, in between 0 and 5 was the modal class. So we can say in between 0 and 5. So compared to 0 and 5 minutes for train or trains. So that's one comparison. That's one comparison. And it's good to always make a little note on your paper. So like say something like mode or modal. just so when the examiners are looking at it, it knows that you've made a comparison using the mode. So yeah. Now we can look at the second. So the second one can be an observation. So if we look back at a table, we can see over here, this is quite unique. So this, in between 20 and 25 minutes, 0 buses were late, but 3 trains were late. So we can make a comment on that. We can say exactly that. We can say in between 20 and 25 minutes, 0 buses were late, whereas 3 trains were late. So for our second one, we can say in between 20 and 25. So yeah, 20 and 25, 20 and 25 minutes. 0 buses were late, whereas or compared to 3 trains. And that's our second one. So that's our second comparison. And that's what the question asked. Well, it actually didn't ask that, but whenever you see something that has 2 marks here, so 2 marks allocated for this question, it's generally asking us to write 2 points. So make sure you have 2 points or 2 comparisons here. And this type of question, so for the whole question, part A and B, it's 5 marks. So these are the many type of different questions you could be asked in frequency polygon. So we have from the easiest is obviously drawing just a frequency polygon. Then we could have the part B may ask about our modal, or it could be asked about probability of using a certain time limit. So either being more than a certain time or less than a certain time or length, depending on what the question asks. And then the last type of question would be obviously you could be asked to draw 2 frequency polygons on one graph or make a comparison using our frequency table at the top. So yeah, these are all the type of questions that you could be asked in frequency polygons. So obviously this would generally be the most hardest, which is the reason for that being is we have to actually write something here. So we have to write a comparison. So many people struggle with that. And then the easiest would just to be draw a frequency polygon. So that's frequency polygons lessons done.